Hello and welcome. Today is Tuesday, July 12th, 2022, and this is a public hearing and the regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. I hereby convene the public hearing to discuss the expenditure budget for fiscal year 2023 and the instructional time model remote learning for 2022-2023 school year. We will begin with the presentation on the expenditure budget for fiscal year 2023, which will be presented by Executive Director Vaughn.
I am hearing nothing.
All right.
Please bear with us as we are momentarily delayed due to a technical difficulty.
All right. Thank you for your patience. Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning, colleagues and community, thank you for joining me tonight to discuss and potentially adopt the district's budget for fiscal year 2023. And now my slide won't change. Oh, there we go. Just have to be a little bit more aggressive. Okay. First, I will cover some general budget highlights. The district uses fund accounting and adopts budget for many different funds. Each fund has unique revenue sources and allowable uses. The district's largest funds are Maintenance and Operations, or M&O, which supports daily operating costs, people and programs, and Unrestricted Capital Outlay, which supports buildings, improvements, furniture, equipment, technology, and other items that will be used longer than a year. The budget across all funds is relatively stable from last year, increasing by about $1.3 million. Most of the increased budget is being driven by an increase in budget balance in the M&O and classroom site funds. M&O resources are available to be used for daily operating costs, and Classroom Site Fund is used by the district for certain instructional salaries and benefits. These increases are being largely offset by a decline in budget availability in Unrestricted Capital Outlay, other federal grants, and bond building, where the district holds unspent funds from previous bond sales. Bond building funds are restricted for use for capital items in the voter-approved spending categories described in the district's bond program. Available resources for the bond program naturally decline as the district utilizes the voter-approved funds. Other federal grants is the budget category that contains many of the district's COVID-19 related federal grants. As these grants are spent and the programs come to an end, less of these funds are available. I will now go into more detail on select individual funds, starting with M&O. Arizona School District's M&O budget is set by statutory formulas that is regularly updated through the state's budgeting process. The formula is driven in large part by weighted student count, which considers average daily membership, or the number of full-time equivalent students served by the district, and student characteristics, such as special education status, to determine how much funding will be made available to the district to serve its students. Funding is also made available for transportation, which considers daily route miles driven to transport students to and from school. Due to the state of Arizona not passing their new year budget in time to be considered in the district's 2023 proposed budget, the budget we're discussing tonight considers last year's per pupil funding or base support level. We will bring back a first revision to the district's budget by September 15th to include new funding provided in the state's recently adopted budget. On this slide, you can see a year-over-year comparison of the budget available in M&O and its various sources. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2023 is based on an increase in student enrollment supported by the analysis provided by Applied Economics at the March 29th board meeting. That increase is what's driving the $1.6 million increase in the revenue control limit from the last revised budget from last year. The revenue control limit is the funding provided from the funding formula I described on the previous slide. It's the ongoing funding generated to support the district's students. The district is also seeing an increase in the value of the district's voter-approved M&O override. This is being driven in large part by the additional per-pupil funding passed by the state for this coming year. The district is also anticipating a larger M&O carry-forward coming into fiscal year 2023 than the district had coming into fiscal year 2022. It's important to note that while M&O overrides and the funding made available through the funding formula are ongoing, the budget balance carry-forward is similar to a rainy day fund. It's only replenished by spending less than the district receives in ongoing funding and is not an ongoing annual revenue source. The district's M&O budget was developed considering guidance provided by the governing board at the April 12th governing board meeting, where the projected budget for fiscal year 2023 was approved. As such, it reflects compensation increases, including performance award advancements, 2% performance pay, raising the district's minimum hourly wage to $15 an hour, and additional pay increases by employee category. The district was able to make these increases available to employees because the district anticipated the additional funding the state passed and was relying on the additional funding we'll see in the next revision to the budget. This budget also reflects positions being transitioned back to M&O from the district's COVID-19 ESSER 2 grant, contracted guest teachers, and additional classroom aides as reflected in the board-approved projected budget. As a result of the budget, 83.6% of the district's M&O budget is spent on salaries and benefits, and 72.7% of the spending is in the classroom. That includes instruction, student support, instructional support, co-curricular activities, athletics, and the K-3 reading program. Now we'll transition to unrestricted capital outlay, sometimes known as DAA. As a reminder, the Unrestricted Capital Outlay Fund supports constructions, remodels of facilities, equipment, textbooks, and other items that will last the district longer than a year. Similar to M&O, unrestricted capital outlay resources are provided to the district via a statutory formula that considers average daily membership or full-time equivalent students served by the district and a funding amount per student. Unrestricted capital outlay considers a prior year student count when determining funding, unlike M&O, which considers current year membership. Here you can see a year-over-year comparison of the unrestricted capital outlay budget limit. Most of the decline in the fund is being caused by budgeted use of the fund balance, and less fund balance being brought forward into fiscal year 2023 compared to 2022. As the district continues to close out the fiscal year 2022, the fund balance may change depending on if all budgeted expenditures occur or not. The carryover for the fund will be updated in the first revision of the budget prior to September 15th. The unrestricted capital outlay budget is split fairly evenly between facility improvements, replacements, and furniture, equipment, and vehicle purchases. The remainder of the budget will be available for textbooks, library books, and instructional materials. The Classroom Site Fund was originally created due to a voter-approved sales tax for education in the early 2000s. After 20 years as a voter-approved initiative, the state legislature took action to continue the Classroom Site Fund as opposed to let it expire. The revenue district received from the Classroom Site Fund is driven by the sales taxes the state collects related to the Classroom Site Fund, as well as certain state land trust transactions. Each year, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee publishes a per-student allocation for the Classroom Site Fund. Districts receive Classroom Site Fund on prior year student counts, similar to unrestricted capital outlay. You can see the district is allocated to receive approximately $8.3 million in Classroom Site Fund revenues for fiscal year 2023 and is carrying forward approximately $8 million from prior years. The district utilizes the Classroom Site Fund for instructional salaries and benefits, including base pay increases, performance pay for classroom teachers, and instructional aides for schools depending on site enrollment, as shown on the slide. The district has a number of other funds that are included in the budget. I've highlighted a couple on the slide, along with the district's plans for fiscal years 2023. Of particular note is the construction of the White Tanks Learning Center, which will be supported by adjacent ways and the district's bond proceeds. The district's M&O, unrestricted capital outlay, and adjacent ways budget discussed tonight are funded in part by local property taxes. The state funding formula for education includes a qualifying tax rate, which sets a consistent starting point for the expected community support of school districts across the state. From that starting point, the levy, or total dollar amount expected to be collected in taxes from the primary tax rate, is adjusted based on certain local factors. Secondary tax rates are set to support voter-approved initiatives such as the district's M&O override and bond program. These two amounts, along with the community's assessed valuation, or the value of the taxable property in the district, set the tax rate. In total, the district's combined tax rate declined as shown on the slide. For tax purposes, the state limits the increased individual homeowners' experience in their valuation to 5% a year. Based on the capped increase in valuation and the decline in tax rate, we estimate an average individual taxpayer will see a small reduction in their property taxes coming from the district. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have on the district's budget for fiscal year 2023.
Any questions?
I've got one question.
Sure.
On slide 8.
Is this slide 8? What's slide 8?
Maintenance and operation planned spending.
Thank you.
The carryover is $1.2 million of what I'm seeing here? Carry forward?
Let me get to the right slide. No.
That would be slide 7, sorry.
Right there.
Let me just get to that slide. No, the carryover. Give me just a second. The carryover that is in the budget is $10 million. The 1.2 million you're seeing on the slide, I'm just showing the difference between the carryover that was in prior year's budget and the carry forward that's going into next year's budget.
So the $8.8 million for 22, FY 22, actually the carryover is $1.2 million more. I'm confused on what I'm reading here.
So each year there's an amount that is carried forward from the prior year. In the fiscal year 2022 budget, the year we're just completing, that the amount that was carried over from fiscal year 2021 was $8.8 million. The amount that we're currently budgeting bringing forward into 2023 from 2022 is $10 million. The differences column, I was just showing the differences year over year and where the funding came from to explain why there's a $3.8 million increase to the M&O budget. But the carryover into 2023 is $10 million.
Okay. All right.
I might be able to shed some light as to why. Is that really your question? Why do we have that difference?
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
Okay, so historically, our executive director, Qualls, has been very conservative on her budgets. And we always have an amount for encumbrances that we expect to spend by the end of the year. And historically, we've never actually spent that much. I think part of this $1.2 million is because our budget is based on being fully staffed, and we were not fully staffed last year. So we do have some carryover due to that as well.
Yeah, with the pay raises, it's going to be reduced. I
Yeah.
understand that. I was just a little bit confused. Okay, I just want a clarification on that.
Sure.
Board Member Zaidama, any questions?
No questions.
Board Member Honak, any questions?
No questions.
I also do not have any questions. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we may come up with some questions in our next section when we actually take action on this item.
Sure.
Next up on our agenda is item C, which is the presentation of the instructional time model, remote learning 2022-2023, which will be presented by Executive Director Duplain.
Members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning, I am here tonight for the second public hearing on the instructional time model. As Executive Director DeCoste presented last time, we had House Bill 2862, which allowed us to adopt instructional time models to provide some flexibility in how our instructional hour requirements are met. It allowed us to meet hours through different modes of instruction. It required us to receive approval from the governing board, and to offer remote learning in the upcoming school year, we have to have an approved, adopted ITM. One of the additional requirements is a student may be permitted to participate in the ITM, but no more than 40% of their total instructional time. And it permits combinations of instruction: direct instruction, project-based, independent, and mastery-based learning. The ITM may be implemented at the student, classroom, school, or district level, and what we are choosing to use this model for is a safety net for children who are quarantined, isolated, or have health, safety, and welfare concerns. This will not be allowed for everyday absences such as regular illnesses or doctor's appointments, etc. So as Executive Director DeCoste presented last time, teachers will manage this learning in core content areas through the self-paced learning management system, Edgenuity. And students will engage in their core classes online during the instructional day or outside of the hours based on the student's need and the plan that is developed by their site administrator. And they will continue to receive math, language arts, science, social studies, and special ed support as applicable. They will be required to meet the following attendance requirements. The minutes they are on Edgenuity will be calculated, and course assignment completion will be documented. They will also, on an optional basis, be meeting with their teachers on Google Meets. This meets several pillars in our strategic plan, allowing students to access curriculum when they cannot be at school, allows us to continue to receive funding, and provides options for parents and students when hit with the quarantine, isolation, or safety and welfare. And as learning opportunities when learning at school is not an option. Edgenuity will cost $39,915 for 750 licenses that we are funding through the Governor's Education Plus Up grant, and we will continue to receive 100% funding as long as we don't surpass the 40% maximum of learning time assigned. And I know we've talked a lot about Edgenuity and My Path. It is a self-paced program based on Arizona standards, and we are able to align the standards with our standards map to ensure that children are not losing time accessing our standards or not losing time working with our standards, so when they come back to school that we can eliminate as much as possible the loss of learning. Students, staff, and families are impacted, and the next step is a call to public for comments, a recommendation to adopt the remote learning instructional time model tonight, and then we will submit it to ADE for approval. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I know this isn't a different presentation than last time, however, for some reason it just stuck out this time. My only thing is that I don't like the optional part for students to do Google Meets with their teachers. Is there a way that we can make that more of a, I mean, I know they're going to do it all day like they were doing before, but that they would check in with them, have some kind of expectation more than an optional for that to happen?
Yes, I can bring it back to our teams to talk through that on how that will look, just to make sure we're balancing supporting our children but not putting too much on our teachers' plates, but I understand the importance of that. So I will bring that back to Executive Director DeCoste and Director Combs.
Dr. Dowling, any questions?
No.
Board Member Honak, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, Executive Director Duplain, excuse me, for your presentation. We will now move on to agenda item 1D, which is the opportunity for public comment. I will read the public comment disclaimer. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to the public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. We have 2 public participation commenters this evening. The first is Ms. Cynthia Schwartz.
Are we on now? Okay. Welcome, Mr. Vaughn. You got tough shoes to fill, and I'm sure you're going to do a great job based on your presentation, so welcome. In the strategic plan, and I have a one-page copy, a copy of one page that comes off the LESD website, although I think there's another strategic plan, but I'm not sure. Under finance, it says increase stakeholder knowledge and understanding of school funding. I'm from New Jersey, and every year the Board of Education put out a budget, and we, the citizens, voted on the budget. So we could vote it down, and the worst thing you want to do is ever have a budget voted down by the residents. I voted every year to pass the budget, even when my son was not in the public school system. However, coming to Arizona, with all these funds and all of these things going on, it's very hard as a citizen to understand what this budget is all about. So let me give you an example. I would like to understand how much money do we spend on SEL. There are 13 SEL programs in Litchfield Elementary School District, so you have to go through all of the meetings, find the agenda, find the list. Then you have to take all of those vendors and put in a public request to find out all of the monies that have been spent. Then you go through the consent agenda and you find out how much money has been spent on stipends. And just to let you know, we spent $30,000 in conscious discipline stipends this year. We only spent less than $5,000 on iReady, which is the new math program. It's a PDF file, and I have to convert that to Excel to figure out how much money we're spending. Then I go through all of the out-of-state travel requests to see if we're also spending money to send people out for SEL. What are we spending? So my bottom line is, this budget is great for the board. It is not consumer-friendly. But the override is going to come up, and you're going to be asking for $10 million. We have no idea what that is, except if it's not passed, we don't get nurses, the PE programs get cut, and there's this fear-mongering that goes on that the school's going to fall apart, and we're not going to have enough teachers. So hopefully with you being in this spot, and also the new community liaison, perhaps you can have something that is consumable by people who are voting to understand what this budget really is about, because it's very complicated, and I say kudos to you because I did not follow it. I thought M&O meant air conditioning, building maintenance. That's what M&O to me sounds like. And my time is up.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Next up for public participation at our public hearing is Mr. Mike Finnegan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Finnegan. Wave after wave of energy, food, and rent hikes are hammering the purchasing power of Litchfield School District taxpayers and consumers. These price increases do not yet reflect the severity of cost increases and unemployment to come from an unavoidable impending recession from increased interest rates. The last PowerPoint slide in Michael Vaughn's presentation indicates the impending concern of the Goodyear City Council. His slide shows that assessed property values have increased due to inflation by 11.3%. Great news for the $10.3 million proposed override, you may think. But hold on. Realizing the inflationary pressures that homeowners are facing, the City Council of Goodyear is attempting to give homeowners some property tax relief by lowering the tax rate 0.1923% to offset inflation. That is a good example of being fiscally responsible to taxpayers. However, back here in La La Land, at a recent school board meeting 2 months ago, it took the school board less than 30 minutes to approve new spending increases of $3.5 million. Mind-boggling. Less than 30 minutes to spend $3.5 million. And this continues to happen with ever-increasing stipends and $5,000 teacher performance pay due to 502 eligible, highly effective rated teachers out of a total of a population of 508 teachers, while 30% of all LESD students are proficient in math AZ merit testing consistently since the year 2015. The school board needs to begin to check the current financial weather reports and budget accordingly. There's a Category 5 financial hurricane gaining strength from trillions of dollars in federal spending, getting ready to hit this community head on. The state of Arizona has passed school choice legislation to fund students and not failed academics and Marxist ideology in our public schools. Thank you, Ibram X. Kendi. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. That concludes our opportunity for public comment in relation to our public hearing.
I motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I will second. Having a first and second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is now adjourned. I now call to order our regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. We will begin with Agenda Item 2B, our Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We will now have a moment of silence. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection and contemplation. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 4A, recognitions and celebrations, which will be presented by our new Director of Community Relations, Director Nuanez.
Thank you, President Moran, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning, audience members, both in person and online. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here for my first board meeting. Here at Litchfield Elementary School District, we highly value our partnerships with our community and supportive organizations. Tonight, we would like to celebrate our partners from the Kiwanis Club of Litchfield Park. Their decades-long partnership with LESD has had many positive impacts on our students, staff, and the entire community. With the momentum created by our beloved David Schwacke, the Kiwanis Club President Erica Stevens, and her outstanding group of volunteers continue in their support of LESD, supporting teacher morale with Meals for Teachers, hosting the annual holiday party for students with special needs, supporting student service clubs that inspire kids to excel and be successful in their educational experience. The list, it could go on and on. This organization is really outstanding. So once again, tonight we celebrate the Kiwanis Club of Litchfield Park for all they have done, all that they do, and all that they will continue to do. So with that, I would like to invite Erica and her team up for a picture with President Moran and Superintendent Gunning. Once again, thank you, Erica, and for all that you do.
Yes. Thank you again to Kiwanis. We appreciate your support of our district. Next up on our agenda is item 5A, which is the acknowledgement of public requests to speak. I will once again read our disclosure that goes along with this section. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. We will begin our public participation on our regular board meeting with comments from Mr. Mike Finnegan.
Hello, everyone. Mike Finnegan. Tonight, I'd like to suggest the LESD 79 School District conduct a school board candidate forum to allow the 4 eligible candidates to speak directly to the public and the district to share their philosophies and address current school issues. It will provide the public an opportunity to know the candidates. The district, parents, and public taxpayers deserve such transparency and will assist them in making an informed decision on what type of leaders will be elected for the next 4 years. In-person attendance and live YouTube streaming is encouraged. What say you, school board members? Please respond afterwards. The obsession with self-regard, as witnessed by the current and ever-growing 15 SEL programs in LESD, has deeply affected public education. A recent international study compared the math proficiency of 13-year-olds in 6 advanced countries. The United States ranked last in math ability, Korea first. The kids were then asked to rate how good they thought they were at math. The Americans were number 1. They couldn't add, but they felt good about themselves. In other words, they were a success, the principal aim of public education today, being to instill students with self-esteem. Reading, maybe. Writing, perhaps. Arithmetic, someday. But self-esteem above all. There seems to be no conception in this district that perhaps self-esteem follows achievement. It is what comes with a sense of mastery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Next up is Ms. Cynthia Schwartz.
Cynthia Schwartz. Is this on? Okay. I didn't write anything, so if I ramble, sorry. I want to comment on the equity statement last week. I know Danielle Clymer isn't here, but she said that the equity statement was part of your strategy to change children's lives. Here's the district's strategy. This is not a strategy. A PowerPoint slide is not a strategy. I worked on Wall Street. I wrote strategy papers. I wrote roadmaps. This is not a strategy. There's nothing here that is actionable. Also, Ms. Clymer said, give them opportunities. There were no specifics. What kind of opportunities are we giving children through equity? And Ms. Sudama, you said it has always been bigger than a race situation. You voted on the equity statement that included Ibram X. Kendi's definition of anti-racism. So you don't get to backpedal. You said it's always been about our special education kids. I'm a SPED parent. My son is 33. I will always be a SPED parent. Don't play the SPED card. You do it too often. You said it's about socioeconomics. You want them starting in the same place. Well, what does that mean? This is all fluff. It says we want to meet them where they are. Well, where are they? What are you even talking about? And you said we haven't had any negative feedback since we made changes. We send emails and you do not respond. This board has stopped responding to us. And on the survey that you paid $5,000 for, when it said, what's the priority? Equity was the last priority in this district. I don't think that you're getting it. And then, Ms. Moran, you said that you're looking to not change the culture and embrace and have an open mind. Where were you when you held up that sign that said not true? When I didn't even finish a sentence, and you were holding up a sign. You held that sign up to Mandy Lott also. You're not very open-minded, but we are. We listen to you recite the lyrics of songs. Everybody should go back to the January 2020 meeting where you made all the board members hum to your favorite song. I mean, are we supposed to have an open mind? This is not the Kim Moran Board of Education. You said that this whole equity statement was very personal. We don't care about your personal feelings about this equity statement. And Dr. Dowling, you did say something that I thought was important. You said you don't even really think we need a two-page equity statement. I have yet to hear any concrete examples.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz.
You're welcome.
Next up is Angie Jeffries.
Good evening. My name is Angie Jeffries. I'd like to start by thanking the board for this opportunity to speak. I would also like to start on a positive note. I have a daughter with Down syndrome who has attended school in this district since the age of 3. She has received all the support and services she has needed since day one at Verado Heritage. Verado Heritage has the mindset and heart set for inclusion, so I understand the importance of inclusion and diversity, and I will note that her story is not the norm for those with disabilities. During the last meeting, Mr. Honak addressed the topic of equity, and at the conclusion of his presentation, Ms. Moran stated, and I quote, "Thank you for your interpretation of the facts. The board's reaction to the presentation is the reason why I'm here. Based upon the responses several of you provided, I would like to question your interpretation of the facts, and I suppose give you mine. Mrs. Moran, you responded to a question from Dr. Dowling, who was not here for the inception of your diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and you interpreted the facts from the genesis of the equity statement until present day. Just to be clear, there was no parental involvement at the beginning of this process until the product of the committee's efforts, which included 5 goals, were leaked to the public. This is substantiated by the legal opinion signed by Arizona Deputy Solicitor General Michael Catlett, which concluded that this board violated the open meeting law by taking a closed-door approach. Following the leak of these goals, this board in its subsequent meetings saw a huge uptick in parental involvement, both supporting and questioning the committee's work. It was in April 2021, after significant community criticism, the board determined they now needed community input. They had already adopted an equity statement in December 2020, which included their own definition of equity and referenced the topic of anti-racism, as well as the extremely controversial author Ibram X. Kendi. Once the district decided to engage parents, I attended a meeting with Superintendent Gunning at Verado Elementary, and it was clear to me that there would be no option to not have an equity statement and that the district would move forward with one. I suppose the only good thing that came out of that meeting was the removal of the anti-racism rhetoric. To Mrs. Zaidama, based upon your comments at the last meeting, you questioned why we are still speaking about the equity statement. You have stated several times that to you, this equity statement has always been bigger than a race situation. And to you, it's about our special education kids and our kids coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. I have found nothing in the district-generated equity documents that mentions our children with disabilities. Rather, the draft documents definitively focused on race. This can be seen in the data researched about the disproportionality in discipline for Black students, reducing disproportionality in achievement for our Black and Hispanic students, and initially with the anti-racism rhetoric. To answer your question as to why we're still talking about it, families have left the district because of this effort to implement equity. That is why we are still talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffries. We will now move on to agenda item 6A.
I asked you at the end of my comment.
I can't hear anything.
School board candidate.
Yeah, Board Member Honak cannot hear you, Mr. Finnegan. If you could please use the microphone.
Okay. We had 3 speakers tonight, a total of 3 minutes each, 9 minutes out of 30 minutes that are allowed. At the end of mine, I asked for your comments on my suggestion for a school board candidate forum, and I would like to give you 3 minutes to respond to that.
Unfortunately, Mr. Finnegan, that's not how this works. This is an opportunity for public comment. My only options to respond, as I read twice this evening, are to direct staff to study the matter, respond to any criticism, or schedule the matter for further consideration and decision. If you would like to meet with me after the meeting, I would be more than happy to give you some direction.
Well, then why was it comfortable with responding at a meeting, like 2 or 3 meetings ago, to a person up here on the microphone.
I can respond to
Directly
criticism,
after
but
they-
I'm choosing not to. Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. We will now move on to...
Okay, well, this request...
Point of order.
This
You are
request to
out of
speak
order.
is not
You are
communication.
out of
Communication is not one way. Communication is two
You are
directions.
out of order. We will now move on to Agenda Item 6A, motion to approve consent agenda items as presented. Do any board members have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Dr. Dowling?
I just have one discussion item. It's on the item F, 7F, financial report.
Okay, noted. We will discuss that before we move. Board members Idema. No items to remove. Board member Honak. Board member Honak, do you have any items you would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get those, I was looking at the agenda items and I had to get the Zoom window up to be able to unmute my microphone more than you need to know, but that was the delay. No, I do not have any to remove.
Thank you. I do not have any items to remove either, although I do also have an item for discussion, which is item
I just wanted to say
N.
all of that because it's not like I'm.
Since your item comes up alphabetically first, Dr. Dowling, I would be happy to hear your discussion point or question regarding item 7F.
7F,
I'm abstaining on everything.
I didn't catch this until just before the board meeting, but I have a question on the IDEA Fund 220. There's a balance right now of almost $600,000. Two questions. Why didn't we use it for the SPED kids? Number two, does it carry forward into the fund?
IDA has no limitations on carry forward, so if we do not use that funding, it will carry forward into the next year. I would have to do some additional research to see what the district had previously budgeted for that grant and what plans didn't come to fruition to better answer your first question.
Yeah, that's fine. Come back. The reason being, I'm of the opinion, personal opinion as board member, that we should fund with IDEA funds as many of our SPED teachers as we can. And right now, we're contracting too many of them for too much money.
Right.
And we've got $600,000 here. I want to know why it wasn't spent, and there's any way we can take, I know you can't move M&O into grants, funding, I understand that. You
Yeah.
can reverse it, but there's opportunities to get contracted teachers into the grant or whatever, but I'd like to have a discussion with you concerning that.
I'd welcome that discussion. There are some rules, specifically with IDEA, that districts have to follow around how much spending is happening for special education in M&O. You're probably aware. And so that spending for special education has to happen first. If it didn't, it would actually put the district's ability to get IDEA funding in jeopardy. But I will definitely
I
do
understand.
some. Okay.
I understand idea.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay, perfect.
And responsibilities on that. I
Sure.
just want an explanation. Over the last few years, we're not spending all the money?
Yeah.
See what we've been bringing forwards and why, and how can we use it better? Can we use it for staffing?
Sure.
And that's my
I'll do
question.
some additional research and get back with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then one more thing is the indirect cost monies. I also have a question on that. That's Fund 570. Why aren't we spending the money?
So indirect cost is generated from the federal grants, as, again, I'm sure you're well aware. And it's part of the rainy day fund that the district has worked very hard to maintain. That would be the reason why. But I would welcome a further discussion on the use of the rainy day fund and how that fits into the financial practices of the
Yeah,
district.
if you and I could sit down and meet, I've met with Wendy, I've
Sure.
met with Megan, and I just have some issues on indirect cost monies. That's a percentage of the grant that's
Yes.
used to administer the grant. And we're not using it. We haven't budgeted off the $6.3 million this year. Haven't budged.
Yep.
I want the money, like the money spent.
Yep. Understood. I welcome that discussion, and we'll do some additional research on your IDEA
Yeah, I'm
question.
sorry for coming in
No.
late, but it's my fault. I have a New Year's resolution that I would not bore everybody on the consent agenda items, but couldn't help myself tonight.
Thank you for your question.
My only point of clarification there would be, of course, any board member is welcome to have discussion on budget items, but any decisions made on, especially any theoretical or reality changes on rainy day funds, would need to be approved by the entire board.
Of course. Thank you for the clarification, though.
Thank you. I would like to make a comment on consent agenda item 7N, which is the supplementary contracts wages, AKA stipends. Just a note for the rest of my fellow board members, we paid out over $200,000 in unused leave payments during this month. So I have a desire to change the culture and potentially the policy to reduce these payouts to reasonable amounts, and hopeful that we will include a discussion regarding unused leave payments in our overall compensation and contract discussions this fall when we look at the compensation system analysis and potentially revamp the process going forward. If there are no other comments, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second. Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item 8A, which is approval of the fiscal year 2023 expenditure budget. We heard a presentation earlier from Executive Director Vaughn, and I will now open the floor to any additional questions or comments before we take action.
I have a question. Maybe it's like a procedure question. Since some comments were brought up in public comment, that have to do with budget, are we allowed to address that?
Yes, we are now on the budget as an agenda item, so you can address whatever you would like with the budget.
A comment was made that we approved additional spending within a 30-minute discussion. And I just think the community should know that we spend hours going through all this information, asking our questions, getting all the information that we need so that when we come here, we're not sitting here for hours and hours and hours in a meeting coming up with decisions. So while it looks like we did it very quickly, we are all working behind the scenes to be prepared for these meetings, just like everybody else does when they go to their job and they do their prep work ahead of time.
Thank you, board members. Item, Dr. Dowling, do you have any additional questions or comments on the proposed budget?
I do not.
Board member Honak, do you have any questions or comments on the proposed budget?
No, I do not.
Excellent, thank you. I also do not have any further questions. My only comment is that I will echo what I said at the last meeting, which I'm really looking forward to being able to see the revised budget numbers with the increased spending that our legislators have approved for us. So on that note, I will move to approve the fiscal year 2023 expenditure budget as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up on our agenda is item 8B, approval of revisions to the instructional time model, remote learning 2022-2023, presented by Executive Director DuPlain. I will open the floor to any board member question or comments regarding this item. Board Member Honak, do you have any questions or comments regarding this item?
No, I do not.
Hearing no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve the revisions to the instructional time model remote learning 2022-2023 as presented.
I will second. Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 8C, additional stipend requests recommended for approval. This will be presented by Director Reichs or Superintendent Gunning. I'm not sure who is up on this one. Welcome, Director Reichs.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. This evening we present additional stipend requests for approval. This document includes 2 stipends requested. One is for the new White Tanks Learning Center principal to complete some training prior to a July 18 contract start date. The second is to allow the Western Sky Middle School office manager to complete some interviews for various open positions and to settle staffing. I'm available for any questions.
I will start by saying, as I believe you know by now, this board appreciates the specific approval of stipends that have not been discussed or potentially proposed in the past. So I appreciate the transparency in this request. Do any board members have any questions or comments on these 2 stipend requests? Board Member Honak, do you have any questions or comments on these stipends?
No, thank you.
Then I will move to approve the additional stipend requests as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our last item in our action discussion agenda items is item 8D, Community Education Program Rate Comparison Study and discussion of possible tuition rate increase, which will be presented by Dr. Stair.
Good evening. I'll start by apologizing for the title. That's the title from last month, but the rest of it, I believe, is correct. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip to the meat of it. At the last board meeting, we discussed whether or not, a discussion began on whether or not our rates were appropriate, and I offered to do a market rate study. If I could explain really quick, this is something that can't be expressed in a PowerPoint. With preschool, you compare yourself to commercial preschools because their rates are what they are. When you compare yourself to districts tend to use braided funding, and so they may have a federal grant or they may have something related to low SES or something like that that artificially reduces or inflates their tuition. And so we can't really tell whether or not our tuition rates in preschool are appropriate by comparing ourselves to other districts, but we can by comparing ourselves to commercial preschools and commercial daycares. Extended day is the exact opposite. Extended day programs First of all, the commercial daycare centers aren't usually willing to give us those rates. They say, come on down with your child and we'll give you a tour, and then we can see exactly what you need and we can give you a rate. But we can compare ourselves to other before and after school programs because they don't typically use braided funding. They tend to be just tuition based, just like we are. So this is preschool here. We had 2 of the providers that we contact that were willing to offer rates for half-day programs and 4 that were willing to offer rates for full-day programs, and these are all local here in Goodyear. And so you can see the figures there. It's a little bit more useful to us to compare it per hour because per month they may offer 11 and a half hours per day and we offer 12, or they may offer a different half-day time period. And so when we break it down per hour, that gives us a little bit more accurate version of how our rates actually compare. So looking at our per hour rates there for half day per hour, our rate is $6.13 per hour that the parents are paying, and the average commercial rate is $6.73 per hour, which is we're about 9% less than the average commercial rate. The full day per hour rate is $3.64. Our rate is $3.64, and the average commercial rate is $4.25, which puts us about 14% below the average commercial rate. I think it's worth mentioning that there are reasons why historically we have tried to keep our tuition around 10% below commercial rates. One is that we're not open year-round, and so there are parents who would choose a commercial option simply because there's 5 weeks out of the year that we're not open, and most of the commercial daycare centers are open except for on just a few holidays. And so in order to choose our programs, the incentive is to be less expensive. Comparing ourselves to commercial competitors here, our costs are lower on facilities. You know, when we want to open a program, I don't have to build a building. We have buildings. We have maintenance staff. We have custodial staff. We get lower prices on some supplies due to bulk buying and part of the Mojave Consortium there. But our costs are higher on payroll, partly because we are an organization with more than 50 employees, and so the Affordable Care Act applies. Many of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act apply to us, and also we have more full-time employees because we have more sites. You need a manager for each site, you need a site leader for each site, that kind of thing. We also match their retirement contributions as part of Arizona State Retirement System for all the employees who work more than 20 hours a week, which is nearly all of our employees. Health insurance, that kind of thing. So our payroll costs tend to be quite a bit higher. I mentioned historically we try to be lower, but also historically we haven't had the type of wage pressure that we do now. We haven't had such a competitive wage environment. And so payroll costs really have become a pivotal and critical factor in how we figure our budget. Also, I think it's worth mentioning many commercial daycare centers are also receiving the same child care stabilization grant funds that we receive, so we're all looking at the same fiscal cliff when those run out. Something else to consider, preschool teachers may now use Quality First grant funds, and so several of our sites, all but 2 of our sites, have now qualified to be part of the Quality First program, and so that reduces some of the pressure on our sites, but that is offset by the fact that for the last couple of years we haven't had to pay for snacks because of federal funding in our food service department. But as of July 1st, just as of last week, we had to begin paying for snacks again. The last year that we paid for snacks for extended day alone, that was over $120,000. And so, you know, combine that with preschool, and it's well over $150,000 for the year. And so if current rates are increased, the new rates would be posted immediately. We would reflect on and would be reflected on the invoices. And this is, of course, would be if on the August invoices if we increased rates right away. Again, traditionally, we have done this kind of market survey and discussed rate increases in early February as we prepare to open registration for the following year. And so it's just another thing to consider is that parents aren't used to having rate increases at this time of year. Not to say it's not appropriate, but it's just out of the norm for what we've done in the past. I didn't include it in the PowerPoint. I don't know if it can be discussed here. I do have figures on extended day comparing them to other districts, but what we discussed last time was preschool, and that was the data that I had agreed to bring. And so if you had questions about extended day, I can compare that to other districts.
Well, I think the primary questions were about preschool versus extended day. Preschool has historically run at a loss, as opposed to extended day, which I believe has run at a small margin. That has helped to supplement our preschool program. If you could just walk me through the math on slide 7, I'm coming up with the differential of 9% for the half day, but I'm coming up with about 16 to 17% for full day.
Okay.
Could you walk me through that
I have to
calculation?
bring out a calculator and do that. Maybe I did the math wrong.
Maybe Executive Director Vaughn would be so kind as to double check my math. And I wasn't sure if, yeah, I mean, I guess it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other versus the hourly rate or the monthly rate. Okay, 16, okay.
There you go.
It
Sorry
does
about that.
seem to come out to 16%.
Okay.
Thank you. I may have just typed it wrong, or I may
Yeah.
have done the math wrong. I don't know.
No
Thank you
worries.
for
So
correcting that.
my first question, to try to get a gauge on whether an increase this year is appropriate, is when this cliff happens with the grant monies going away, what do you expect that increase to need to be? What percentage are we looking at there?
I could only speculate at this point. A lot of that has to do with what our enrollment is like at the time. And so if enrollment stays low, and it is, again, artificially low because we have wait lists because of staffing, if it stays low, then it's a higher increase because of our overhead. We do have applications trickling in. We've been able to do a lot more hiring this summer than we have in the previous year. And so I'm hopeful that figure would be quite a bit less. But my best guess, based on the trend that we have going, it would be somewhere between a 10 and 15% increase. And that is assuming that all the people that we've made full-time under the grant would go back to 7 hours. All the people who are receiving tuition and reimbursement under the grant would no longer be receiving that all of those benefits would go away. So somewhere between 10 and 15%, and that's pretty conservative, I think. It could be higher, again, if our enrollment doesn't increase.
Okay, what I would like to propose, I'm more than happy to hear additional discussion from board members, but my initial thought here is that I would like to see us at a comparable rate for half day and full day. So my proposal would be to increase the full day tuition to get us closer to that 9 to 10% when compared with our peers. That would be, about a 6% increase this year, which then would get us about halfway to what you're saying that estimate is going to be when those grants are taken away.
All right.
Board members Idema, do you have any questions or comments on?
My only concern would be doing this when we're about to start school in a few weeks. That would be the only thought, that people have started planning their budgets for school and things like that. Is it possible that we could look at doing it after the semester as opposed to start of school year? What if we started the year with this tuition and let them know there would be an increase in January and potentially an increase again, probably, for next school year?
Certainly. Yeah, that is entirely possible.
I will note, just for reference, a 6% increase on the full day monthly tuition would be an increase of $47. Dr. Dowling?
That's $47 on the monthly.
Yeah, so it'd be
Correct.
the 785 plus 47, so it'd be $832, which is still significantly lower than the average commercial rate.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing that Melissa give these parents time to understand that there will be a rate increase in January 1. That way they can shop around if they choose to. They can leave the program. If they feel committed and it's worthwhile, then they're going to have to pay it. Price increases are never good. So I would like to see it postponed until January, give them time to make an informed decision. I mean, you know, it's right after the holidays. You know. But I agree with Melissa.
One thing that also does is it completes this hiring season. So at that time, we'll know how many certified versus credentialed teachers that we would have, and our budget would be a lot clearer at that point.
One comment on that is, it seems as though we are allowing our enrollment and our staffing to dictate what we're charging. And I asked a few years ago, and I'll ask the question again, what is the purpose of our preschool program? And I don't think I've ever really gotten an answer to that, to know what should the priorities be when it comes to our decision making, because we seem to swing back and forth, and I know COVID's a huge factor in that, and none of us had control over that. So I just want us to be really thoughtful, especially with these grants that are expiring, when we talk about what the purpose of our preschool program is, and make sure that we are charging accordingly and getting back to a healthy operating cash flow in that area. Board Member Honack, do you have any questions or comments on this?
Well, I'm really torn about the, I'd say delaying the increase, and people are really hurting. As far as what you were alluding to about what's the purpose and all that, if since we're in the dumpster academically, if we had our preschool where we were aggressively preparing kids to know the alphabet and phonics and numbers and things like that so that they could achieve better, then our subsidizing it somewhat would be justified. That would be my goal for the preschool. Everybody seems to talk about everything other than academics around here. And that's to me the only purpose of this whole of the school district. So if this is that's where brains develop, when they're very, very early childhood. That's the biggest lever that we have, and so nobody seems to be talking about that. If there were something discussed about that and how what we're actually doing with that preschool, then after that we could have an intelligent discussion about the finances. But sadly, it's either not on the priority or whatever. So got nothing more to say here.
Okay, so we seem to have reached a consensus, and I'm more than happy to delay any increase until January. On the timing, is there any additional board member feedback on a percentage increase? Is this something that we want to take action on this evening, or do we want to revisit this in December to take action in January, or do we want to put this to bed so we can let our parents know what's coming down the pike?
I would rather us decide tonight so we can start letting parents know, and they can be preparing now for what's coming. And I wouldn't necessarily say that off number. I would just put it at an even $50 because I like nice, even numbers.
And my other suggestion would be, if we're going to delay until January, could we put a little bump on the half day as well?
I'm sorry?
Could we put a little bump up on the half day as well? If we're going to, it wouldn't have to be as much, but 3%. I don't know what you would suggest for that, Dr. Stair.
I don't know what to say because it's hard to read the future, that crystal ball. They're facing the same fiscal cliff as the rest of our programs when that grant runs out. And so, I think 3% initially is appropriate. And it's, that's not overdoing it for sure. And then we can look from there on what may need to happen at the end of the year.
Okay, so just to reiterate, those proposed percentages are based on our relative charge to the average commercial rate. So we could increase the half-day by 3%, which would be, let me do the math, $10. And then we could increase the full day by 6%, which would be $50. Any board member feedback on those dollar amounts? Dr. Stair, is there anything else we should consider?
Probably, but not that I can think of at the moment. No.
Okay, then I will move to approve an increase effective January of 2023 of $10 for our half-day monthly preschool and $50 for our full-day monthly preschool.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Stair.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is item 9A, the Learning Recovery Scorecard Update, presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, there haven't been a lot of changes since last month, so I'm just going to highlight a few. There are just a couple, so let me get down to some of the new items. What you will see on this is that we started to draft observables as we are preparing for our return on investment. So we're at the very beginning stages. This is a working document for our district, so you actually see the work in progress. So wanted to point out that we've made some progress in the math aid per school. We're down to 2 open positions. Before that, it's been sitting at a pretty high number, so that was exciting to see progress being made over the summer in relation to that. And summer school, wanted to point out, we know that we shared last month that we had 836 students participating, but we wanted to point out that 60 of those were our multi-language learners from 11 of our schools to join our ELD Academy and Summer Boost. So we thought those were exciting things. The last thing, and also to answer any questions as well, is just wanted to check in to see if this is something that we could do every other month. We'd share it in August and then share it then October, because we don't have a lot of movement now that the things are actually happening. But in August, we definitely want to be able to share the data that we have from summer school and tutoring from last year. But wanted to see, because originally when we put this in place, we wanted it monthly, but I think that was just because the grant was ever changing with lots of updates.
Do any board members have an issue with this particular report going to every other month at this point? I see Dr. Dowling shaking his head, no problem. Board Member Zaidama says no problem. Board Member Honak.
I don't see a problem.
I also do not see a problem. So yes, August would be, you said it would continue in August, and then after that it would go to every other month?
Yeah.
Excellent. Any board member questions on the learning recovery update? Okay, thank you. Next up is item 9B, which is the first reading of policy revision BEDB agenda, which is presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we wanted to review, based on our board retreat, looking at the agenda, the structure of our agendas, and adding call to the audience for our special meetings as well. So that the special meetings are those ones where you have typically action being taken.
I believe based on the discussion during our retreat, we had consensus that this was an action that the board wanted to pursue. The policy itself basically just consists of putting the call to the audience in our permanent quote-unquote agenda for special meetings. Board Member Dowling, do you have any questions on this change?
No, I'm in favor of it.
Board Member Zaidama?
No questions.
Board Member Honak?
So, again, it takes a minute to switch over. In special meetings, so I don't think I was at that, I don't want to waste a lot of time, but this item, it says announcements is now called to the audience. Is that like a call to the public, or what exactly is that?
Correct.
So now they're only on the regular meetings, and we're now going to add it to the special meetings?
Correct.
Okay, why is it called call to the audience instead of call to the public? Just because it doesn't, it's the same thing, just like the better name?
It functions in the same way. On the actual agenda, we call it community opportunity for comment. So call to the public, call to the audience, I think those are all interchangeable terms.
If you look at the actual board policy that we're looking at, though, it seems like, which has not been changed, was our regular meetings, it's called to the audience. So I think maybe we're just trying to use the same wording in our board policy, if I'm correct, right?
Okay, that makes sense. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay, there is no action related to this item. It is information discussion only. Any additional comments?
Is that the only
Great,
change?
then we will move on to agenda item 9C, which is superintendent performance-based compensation goals for 2022-2023. This will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we wanted to start the discussion early in regards to the superintendent's goals. So we wanted to begin discussion tonight to look at the goals, because our hope is that in our next meeting, you would come back with goals that you would prefer, along with potential measurements for those goals or recommendations for measurements. So the strategic plan that you have and the goals that you have listed, it shows you each year that we did those goals, so you can see which goals we have not addressed yet as we approach the final stages of the strategic plan. There are several under service that we have not addressed yet. I would recommend under student success, the foster of academic excellence, as we are still working on the learning recovery, so I think that needs to be a priority. Any questions in regards to those, or comments, or?
I would just like to add a little bit more background information. So how the process works is the overall goals are set and dictated by the strategic plan, but the measurements are up for discussion, as are the specific goals. I personally do not believe that if we haven't addressed a goal that we must address it this year. I think we need to look at where we are in relation to learning loss and choose the goals appropriately. If we get to the end of the strategic plan and there are goals that we have not specifically addressed, I think that's okay. Some of the goals are, in my opinion, softer than others. So we, as a board, have the opportunity at our board retreat to discuss the goals themselves. So I would like for each board member to take some time between now and the retreat to look over the goals, decide your top 4 or 5 that you would like to see addressed, as well as come up with some measurements that you believe would be an adequate way to measure success in those goals. We will discuss those at the retreat. We will not take any action, but we will potentially bring back that consensus to the board meeting in August to approve the superintendent goals for the 2022-2023 school year. In between, if any board members have questions for Superintendent Gunning, if you're not clear about what sorts of things would be included in those goals or what would be kind of the underlying supports that would go into achieving those goals, feel free to have a conversation with myself or with Superintendent Gunning to talk about those. Dr. Dowling, do you have any questions on this first phase of goal setting?
No, I'm in agreement that when you discuss this further at the board retreat, and we need, as I've spoken before, academic achievement has to be a goal that has to be addressed every single year. It's the measurement and how we measure what we call academic success needs to be, I think it needs to be spelled out a little bit clearer. But other than that, no. We can come back and address the or 4 or 5 top goals and come to a consensus, hopefully.
Brian Owen, our data guru, will be in attendance at the retreat, not only to show us where we've been, but also potentially give us some guidance on what some optimal measurements would be for calculating academic success. Board Member Zaidama, do you have any questions on this process?
No, I think it's good for us to kind of come up with a list and then we can go through them at the retreat. I would also agree that there might be some we don't get to. COVID threw a monkey wrench in our whole lives, and so we have to just be willing to kind of roll with that and be like, some things are just going to have to wait until we address the critical issues that are happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Board Member Honak.
Well, I think it would be wonderful if we could have like a big bonfire at the retreat, and then we could each have a copy of these and then just throw them in the bonfire. But seriously, words like foster, foster academic excellence. This is just baloney beans. And, we need to say increase academic achievement by X percent. That's English language. That's the way adults talk. Foster academic excellence. Does that mean that we just spend 30 more seconds a day, being pathetically terrible, or what? So I'm excited that every time I've tried to want to talk about this, it's always been, oh, no, we can't do it now because of the strategic plan. So I'm being very sorry. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to be excited that the only thing I don't like is just saying, well, 5 of them, because I think that really all of them need to be reworded to turn them into English instead of something that a used car salesman would say. So I'm very excited about our changing the goals. We really need to have them, because if you don't have any goals, it's guaranteed you're not going to go anywhere. And that's basically what's been happening at LASD. So maybe there's some hope for a change with things changing a little bit around here.
Okay, I just want to clarify that we will not be changing the goals, but we will be creating measurements for those goals. So for example, under foster academic excellence and innovation for students, that would still be the goal, but the measurement would be specific, as in X percentage growth in math. I don't know what those measurements are going to look like, but you certainly can spend some time coming up with what you would like to see for those measurements. But we will be using and selecting the goals from the strategic plan that has been adopted by the governing board.
When was the strategic plan adopted? Because I've been here now over a year, gone through a full cycle, and we're still at the thing where you know what, forget it. Okay, we just need to change some board members and get some people here, because this is hopeless. We're sitting here after a year and saying we can't change this because of that, because of some utterly idiotic rules that were made up.
The strategic plan was adopted in 2019, and it's a 5-year plan, so it goes through 2024. We discussed at the
Says
previous
who?
retreat
Why is it
origins of
just
the
because you
strategic
adopted
plan
it
and the
to-
process that the board went through in 2019 to get feedback in a very methodical way to implement the strategic plan. So,
News alert, it doesn't
in
work. It
2023
doesn't work, so
or
let's change it.
2024, I believe the board will make steps to adopt a new strategic plan to take them into the next 5 to 10 years. You will be on the board at that point, Mr. Honak, so hopefully you can have some input in that process when the time comes. Next up on our agenda is item 10A, which is Superintendent Gunning's report.
Madam President, members of the governing board, just a few updates. One, we were able to attend our extended school year classrooms today, which was a wonderful event to see our students that are coming from all different campuses, all different programs, being able to access learning and opportunities and skill building. As well as I've been working with our tri-district consortium with our superintendents in both Avondale and Agua Fria on a district safety conference. So we're looking at creating a Southwest Valley safety conference in either the late fall or early winter. We're doing that in conjunction with all of our chiefs of police and first responders. We have our first planning session as not only tri-districts, but inviting all of our chiefs, first responders, as well as other superintendents in the surrounding West Valley districts coming up at the end of July to formalize what that conference will look like. We have our welcome back for our administrators starting July 20th, new teacher induction July 28th. Welcome back lunches will be August 3rd through the 5th. Open house, it's hard. I can't believe we're talking about this already. August 4th and 5th, and the first day of school will be August 8th. That's all I have.
So exciting, so much to look forward to. Next on our agenda is item 2B, reports from governing board members. I thought this evening we would mix it up a little bit and start with board member Zaidama.
Mine's going to be pretty short. This has been a very chill month. We did have our retreat, the part one of our retreat, which I thought was fantastic because it gives us an opportunity to get to know each other as board members, kind of get an understanding of where we're coming from, what our perspectives are when we come to the dais and we are voting up here and having discussions and making decisions. And I'm excited to see what we are able to come together with as goals for this district going forward and planning for growth and what's going to happen in the future. We also had our study session that I attended, and then I was also, the best part of this whole time was today when we got to go to the extended school year and see those classrooms. I'm also a SPED mom, so it was nice to get to see that program and what that looks like, as I have not actually had experience with that before, so I was able to kind of see what that looks like, and our staff works very hard. They get to know all those kids inside and out. People that are there every day and people that are maybe not there every day also just knew all the kids and knew all their little nuances and were able to help them if they were needing help in any way, and it was great to see that. I appreciate them letting us in there. The students were fantastic. They did not get disrupted in their day by us being there at all, which can be challenging for students that have the struggles that they do, and they were great. They didn't have any issues. It did not disrupt their class at all, so it was nice to see that and get to see their world for a few weeks. It's an unfunded program that we have to put on for our students, so it's just another thing that I think the community needs to know with funding and things that we're getting. There's lots of unfunded mandates that they're put on us by the state, by our country, you know, all around, and this is just another one of them where we are doing the very best we can for our students with the funds that we have, and Director McComb is doing a fantastic job with her program, so kudos to her for all the work that she puts in every day as the director.
Thank you, Board Member Zaidama. Board Member Honak.
No comment tonight.
Board Member Honak, do you have a report?
I do not. You did not hear me? Can you hear me
Yes.
now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
No comment.
Thank you, Board Member Honak. Dr. Dowling.
I'm going to be very brief since I took up most of my time during the consent agenda. Welcome aboard, Michael. I'm just looking forward to the school year academically. I think we really need to get these kids to where they need to be. I'm looking forward to the efforts of our staff, our teachers, to see exactly what we can do. I'm just as a grandparent, parent, I'm just really concerned about how our kids are going to perform over this next school year. But I'm optimistic by nature. And with that, I'll say I'm sorry I didn't go to that to the extended day school year, I should say. I had a doctor's appointment, eye doctor appointment once a year, and those are the ones you make an appointment a year in advance, and then they send you an email at 5 o'clock on Friday that you got an appointment. And so I missed it. I really was looking forward to going, but I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Dowling. We'll let you get by with missing an event here and there. Don't worry. For my report, I also attended the study session as well as the extended school year program today with Board Member Zaidama, and was very impressed with the program and the impact that that's having on some of our students who have very specific challenges that they are dealing with. And I'm very proud of our staff and our district for the hard work that they do when it comes to our special needs students. I also attended the first of 2 board retreats. This specific one was on planning. We had a productive, respectful conversation, and I look forward to part 2 on goals later this month. And accomplishing the homework project that we have to do between now and then. I don't get homework very often. I was also able to work in the community and volunteer at the fireworks stand for Millennium High School Marching Tigers, which is our feeder district. And I got to work that day with some delightful former Litchfield Elementary School District students, which is always a pleasure to see where our students go and that they behave in a wonderful way that makes me proud. I also filed my nomination petition signatures with Steve Watson's office. Steve Watson is the Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools. There will be 2 open seats on this governing board this fall. As of now, there will be 4 candidates. Your vote is important. You can register to vote at servicearizona.com. The deadline to register is October 11th to vote in the general election on November 8th. Please research the candidates and exercise your right to vote. Finally, I was able to participate in a community event, which was held here at the Wigwam, which is their annual July 4th celebration of fireworks. And it just reiterated to me how grateful I am that I live in the United States of America. There's nowhere else I would rather be. So I'm going to close with lyrics from the song American Music by Violent Femmes. Do you like American music? We like all kinds of music, but I like American music best. Thank you. The last item on our agenda is item 10C, reports from the administrators, which are information only. This month, we only received reports from our department directors, as our school administrators, principals, are not in operation right now. So it was a quick month for me and hopefully the rest of the board members to be able to read through those reports. I am also looking forward to the students coming back. As you know, we love those reports and the information it provides, photos and other events that are happening on the campuses. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.